Hello, friends. Tonight we are traveling into the enchanting world of Greek mythology. While you drift into a peaceful sleep, I will be here with you. We will begin with the divine love of Eros and Psyche, then move on to the heroism of Hercules, Apollo's love, Orpheus's music, and the reign of Persephone. Lie down comfortably, close your eyes, let's begin. Our first tale, The Lord of Love, our god Eros and the story of Psyche. In ancient Greece, in a small kingdom, there lived three princesses. The first two were beautiful, but the third, Psyche, was so beautiful that people held their breath when they saw her. The people began to call her the second Aphrodite, leaving the temples of the true goddess and worshipping Psyche instead. This angered the goddess of beauty, Aphrodite. How could this be, she thought. I am the most beautiful among the gods. How could a mortal be loved more than I? Aphrodite called her son, Eros, the winged god who made mortals fall in love with his arrows. My son, she said, punish this girl. Make her fall in love with the most hideous, most dreadful creature in the world. Eros agreed. In the dark of night, he entered Psyche's room. But when he saw the young girl, the arrow slipped from his hand and accidentally pierced his own skin. At that moment, the god of love fell in love with a mortal. Days passed. Psyche's beauty made her miserable because no one wished to marry her. Everyone admired her, but they were too afraid. Her father grew worried and sought the oracle at Delphi. The prophecy's words were terrifying. Take Psyche to the top of a mountain. There a monster will come for her and take her as his wife. Crying, her family brought her to the mountain and left her there alone. Psyche waited in fear, but then a gentle wind lifted her and softly carried her to a golden palace. The palace was magnificent. Crystal chandeliers, marble columns, silk curtains, everything perfect. When night came, in the darkness, a voice spoke. Do not be afraid, Psyche, said the voice. I am your husband, but you must never see my face. If you try to look upon me, you will lose everything. Psyche agreed, and happy days began. Every night her husband came to her. They talked in the dark, they laughed, but Psyche never saw him. One day her sisters visited her and sowed seeds of doubt. Maybe he truly is a monster, they said. That's why he hides his face. One night, light a lamp and see for yourself. Psyche hesitated, but curiosity overcame her. That night, while her husband slept with trembling hands, she lit a lamp, and what she saw took her breath away. Before her lay the most beautiful being in the world, golden hair, white wings, the god of love, Eros himself. But in her excitement, a drop of hot oil fell from the lamp onto his shoulder. Eros awoke and saw the betrayal in Psyche's eyes. I trusted you, he said sadly, but you broke your promise. Now I must go. He spread his wings and flew away. Psyche was heartbroken. She had lost her love, and to win him back she was willing to do anything. She went to the temple of Aphrodite and knelt before her. Please, she begged, give me a chance to win Eros back. Aphrodite smiled coldly. Very well, she said, but first, you must complete 3 impossible tasks. The first task was to separate a mountain of wheat, barley, and lentils in one night. Psyche looked at it in despair, but then thousands of ants appeared and helped her. By morning, every grain was sorted. The second task was to gather wool from golden sheep, but these sheep were wild and killed anyone who approached. A reed whispered to her, wait until evening. When the sheep sleep, collect the wool caught in the bushes. Psyche followed its advice and completed the task. The third task was the hardest of all, to descend into the underworld and bring back a box of beauty from Persephone. Psyche was determined. She crossed the dark river, slipped past Cerberus, the 3-headed dog, and reached Persephone's palace. The queen of the dead handed her a small box. "Take this," she said, "but do not open it. Deliver it to Aphrodite." Psyche agreed and began her journey back. But on the way, curiosity overcame her once again. "Maybe the beauty inside will help me win Eros back," she thought. She opened the box, but inside was no beauty, only a deep, enchanted sleep. Psyche fell to the ground and closed her eyes. Eros, healed from his wound, searched for her and found her lying motionless. He brushed the sleep from her face and whispered, "Psyche, we will never be apart again." He carried her to Olympus and begged Zeus for permission. Zeus smiled, gave Psyche ambrosia to drink, and made her immortal. And so Psyche became a goddess, and with Eros she lived happily ever after. Now let's listen to the story of the greatest hero, Hercules, the son of Zeus and the strongest man in the world. But Hercules' life was never easy because Hera, the wife of Zeus, was very angry with him. Hera never loved the child that Zeus had with another woman. Hercules grew up, married, and built a happy family. But one day, Hera sent him a curse. Hercules went mad and committed a terrible mistake. He killed his family with his own hands. When he awoke, he realized what he had done and was filled with deep sorrow. "I am a monster," he cried. "How could I do such a thing?" He went to a priest and asked, "How can I ever be freed from this sin?" The priest said, "Go to Eurystheus, the king of Mycenae, and complete the 12 labors he gives you. Only then will you be forgiven." Hercules agreed and set out. The first task was the Nemean lion. This lion was no ordinary beast. Its skin could not be pierced by any weapon. Arrows, spears, swords, none of them worked. Hercules found the lion in its cave and wrestled it with his bare hands. They fought for hours until Hercules squeezed its neck and killed it. He wore the lion's skin as armor and went on to the next task. The second task was the Lernaean Hydra, a serpent with 9 heads. And every time one was cut off, 2 grew in its place. Hercules could not defeat it alone, so his nephew Iolaus helped him. Each time Hercules cut off a head, Iolaus burned the wound with fire, so no new heads could grow. At last, they killed the Hydra. The third task was to capture the Serenean hind, a deer with golden horns and great speed. For a full year, Hercules chased it and finally caught it alive. He did not kill it because the deer belonged to Artemis. The fourth task was to catch the Erymanthian boar alive. Hercules chased it through the snow until he trapped it with a net. The fifth task was to clean the Augean stables in a single day. These stables had not been cleaned for 30 years, and thousands of animals lived there. Hercules used his mind. He changed the course of 2 rivers and let their waters wash away all the filth in one day. The sixth task was to kill the Stymphalian birds. These had vicious creatures with bronze beaks that ate people. Hercules rang a loud bell. The birds flew into the air, and with his arrows he shot them all down. The seventh task was to capture the Cretan bull. This bull breathed fire and was wild and fierce. Hercules wrestled it and defeated it. The eighth task was to bring the horses of Diomedes. These horses ate human flesh. Hercules killed Diomedes and fed him to his own horses, so they became calm. The ninth task was to take the belt of Hippolyta, the queen of the Amazons. Hippolyta was willing to give it to Hercules, but Hera stirred the Amazons into battle. Hercules fought and won and took the belt. The 10th task was to steal the cattle of Geryon. Geryon was a giant with 3 bodies. Hercules killed him and brought the cattle back to Mycenae after a long journey. The 11th task was to bring golden apples from the garden of the Hesperides. This garden was at the edge of the world, guarded by a 100-headed dragon. Hercules asked the giant Atlas for help. Atlas fetched the apples, while Hercules held up the sky in his place. The 12th and final task was the hardest, to descend into the underworld and capture Cerberus, the three-headed dog, alive. Hercules obtained Hades' permission and wrestled Cerberus with his bare hands. He brought the beast to the surface, showed it to Eurystheus, and then returned it to the underworld. Thus, the 12 labors were completed. Hercules was freed from his sins, and among the gods, he was honored as a true hero. Now let's listen to the story of the sun god Apollo, the son of Zeus, the god of the sun, of music, and of prophecy. He was handsome, strong, and all-knowing. One day Apollo quarreled with the god of love Eros. "Your arrows are mere toys," said Apollo. "They are not real weapons." Eros was angered by these words and decided to take revenge. He prepared 2 arrows, one of gold, which brought love, and another of lead, which brought hatred. He shot the golden arrow at Apollo, and the lead one at a beautiful water nymph named Daphne. From that moment, Apollo fell madly in love with Daphne. But Daphne began to hate Apollo. When Apollo saw her, he said, "How beautiful you are! Please, stay with me." But Daphne cried out, "No," and ran away. Apollo chased her, calling, "Don't be afraid, I am a god. I will not hurt you." But Daphne didn't hear. She only kept running, through forests, across hills, along rivers. Apollo grew closer with every step. Daphne was growing tired, she could hardly breathe, and Apollo was almost upon her. In desperation, she cried out to her father, the river god Pegasus, "Father, please, save me, change my form." Pegasus heard his daughter's voice and transformed her. When Apollo reached out to touch her, his hands met rough bark instead of skin. Daphne's hair turned to leaves, her arms to branches, her feet to roots. She had become a beautiful laurel tree. Apollo stood by the tree and spoke in a sorrowful voice, "Dear Daphne, I will never speak with you again, but I will never forget you." He took some laurel leaves, wove them into a crown, and placed it upon his head. "From now on," he said, "the laurel will be my sacred tree. All poets and heroes shall wear laurel crowns, and your beauty shall live forever." And from that day on, the laurel became the symbol of victory and honor. Apollo always wore his laurel crown and thought of Daphne every day. This story teaches us that love can take many forms, and that some beauties are meant to live only in memory. Now, let's listen to a beautiful story about the power of music. Orpheus was the most talented musician in the world. He had a lyre, and when he played, the birds went silent, the rivers stopped, even the trees leaned closer to listen. One day, Orpheus met a beautiful nymph named Eurydice. Eurydice was gentle, her smile was like spring flowers, and her voice was as sweet as morning birds. They fell in love with each other and were married. Their wedding was full of joy. There was music, there was dancing, and everyone was happy. But one day, while walking in the meadow, Eurydice felt something prick her foot. When she looked down, she saw a small snake. Eurydice slowly sat on the ground, closed her eyes, fell into a deep sleep, and her soul went to the underworld. Orpheus called out, "Eurydice, where are you?" But there was no answer, only the sound of the wind. At last he found her, but she was asleep and would not wake. Orpheus was heartbroken. He took his lyre and played the saddest melody ever heard. Even the sky cried and rain began to fall. Then he made a decision. "I will bring Eurydice back," he said. He went to the entrance of the underworld, a dark cave. With his lyre, he began to play a soft tune. The music was so beautiful, even the stones moved aside to let him pass. At the river Styx, the boatman Charon was waiting. "Who are you?" asked Charon. "Only the dead may cross." Orpheus played another song. When Charon heard the music, tears filled his eyes, and he allowed Orpheus to cross. Then came the three-headed dog, Cerberus. It growled and bared its teeth. But Orpheus sang a lullaby. Cerberus slowly lay down and fell asleep. At last, Orpheus reached the palace of Hades and Persephone. Hades sat on his throne, Persephone beside him. "What do you want?" asked Hades, his voice deep and stern. Orpheus knelt and played his most beautiful song. He told of his love for Eurydice, her laughter, her voice, and how life was meaningless without her. The music was so moving, Persephone's eyes filled with tears. Even Hades softened. "Very well," said Hades. "You may take her back to the world of the living, but on one condition. Until you reach the surface, you must not look back. If you do, she will remain here forever." Orpheus agreed and began his ascent. Eurydice followed quietly behind him. He climbed through the dark tunnel, higher and higher. Light was approaching. He was almost at the surface. But then a thought came to him. What if she is not behind me? What if Hades deceived me? Doubt overcame him, and for a single moment, he turned. Eurydice was right there. She smiled softly and reached out her hand, but in that instant, her body faded like a shadow, and she was gone. "No," cried Orpheus, but it was too late. Eurydice returned to the underworld. Orpheus reached the surface, but never sang again. His lyre was silent. He thought only of Eurydice. Years passed. Orpheus lived alone, and finally, he too passed away. His spirit went to the underworld, and there he found Eurydice once more. This time, they were together forever. This story teaches us that love requires patience, and sometimes trust is more important than sight. Now, our last story tells how the seasons were born. The hero of our story is Persephone, the daughter of Demeter, the goddess of spring. She was young, joyful, and very beautiful. Wherever she went, flowers bloomed, birds sang, and the sun shone. Demeter loved her daughter deeply and always kept her by her side. They walked together through the fields, admired the flowers, and laughed together. One day, Persephone was gathering flowers in the meadow with her friends. Daffodils, tulips, daisies, colors filled the field. But then she saw a special flower, bright and shining, the narcissus. Persephone reached out to pick it, and as she pulled it from the ground, the earth opened. A great chasm appeared, and from it came a chariot drawn by black horses. Driving the chariot was Hades, the king of the underworld. He saw Persephone and fell in love with her. He lifted her into his chariot and took her below the earth. Demeter searched for her daughter. "Persephone!" she cried, "where are you?" But there was no answer, only the sound of the wind. Demeter was heartbroken. She no longer looked after the flowers. She left the fields and wept endlessly. From that moment on, the world began to change. Flowers withered, trees lost their leaves, the air grew cold. That was how the first winter began. In the underworld, Persephone was in Hades' palace. The palace was dark, but also beautiful. Crystal stones shone, rivers flowed quietly beneath the earth. Hades treated her with kindness. "Please," he said, "be happy here. I will give you everything." At first, Persephone missed her mother, the sun, and the flowers. But with time, she began to see the beauty of the underworld, its silver flowers, golden trees, and calm, eternal light. Days passed. Persephone came to understand Hades and saw that he was not cruel, only lonely. He longed for love. But on the surface, Demeter was still crying. Nothing grew. People were starving. The gods grew worried. Zeus said, "This cannot go on. Demeter's grief is freezing the world." He sent Hermes to the underworld to speak with Hades. "Hades," said Hermes, "you must let Persephone return, or the earth will remain in winter forever." Hades thought for a long time. He loved Persephone, but he knew the world needed her. "Very well," he said, "but there is one condition. If Persephone has eaten anything here, she must remain." Hermes asked Persephone. She lowered her head. I ate 6 pomegranate seeds." Hades looked sad, but also hopeful. Then Zeus offered a solution. Persephone, he said, you will spend 6 months of the year with your mother and 6 months with Hades. Persephone agreed. It was a fair solution. And so the seasons were born. Each year, when Persephone returned to her mother, spring came again. Demeter rejoiced, the world bloomed, the birds sang, and the sun shone brightly. Then came summer. Everything grew and flourished. But when autumn arrived, Persephone returned to Hades. Demeter grieved, leaves fell, the air grew cold, and winter came. While Persephone was in the underworld with Hades, the world waited silently. But each year spring returned, because Persephone always came back, and life began anew. This story teaches us that everything moves in cycles, that separation is followed by reunion, and that love always finds a way. And so, our 5 beautiful stories come to an end. Tonight, we heard of the eternal love of Eros and Psyche, the heroism of Hercules, the devotion of Apollo to the laurel tree, the power of Orpheus's music, and how Persephone created the seasons. These tales were told thousands of years ago, and they are still with us today because they speak of love, of courage, of hope, and of the beauty of life. Now, if you are still awake, lie back comfortably. Let your eyes close slowly and your breath deepen. Perhaps, in your dreams, you will see Olympus, the palaces of the gods, golden clouds, and the endless sky. Perhaps you will walk through Persephone's garden, among the flowers, listening to the birds, or hear the distant music of Orpheus, softly guiding you toward a peaceful sleep. Whatever you see, I know your dreams will be beautiful. Good night, sweet dreams, and may you wake to a new day, rested and renewed.